I have with me here today the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, who will be addressing you, and I also have Minister Hines. So at this stage, we'll ask the Honorable Prime Minister to address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Good afternoon, members of the media. Good afternoon, members of the listening public. We have just concluded the cabinet meeting 24 hours earlier than we normally would have. And that in itself is a good thing. But I thought today, as head of the government, that I should speak to the public so that the public could understand how the government views the developments which have been exercising the national community for the last few days. Let me back up a bit and say that we understand very clearly that the administration of Trinidad and Tobago has three separate areas, if not arms, of responsibility. One is the Parliament, where we participate as elected or nominated members to both houses of Parliament, and therefore we are involved in the parliamentary business of state. The other is the executive, which is the cabinet, including all the members of government covered by cabinet responsibility under the Constitution. And the third arm is the judiciary, which is led by the Chief Justice. Now, we of the executive, we operate continuously in the political arena. And therefore, we are not thin-skinned, or we are not without an understanding of the political aspect of all our decision-making and the implications for our management of the state affairs. But by the same token, we are not unmindful or without our observation as to how others choose to conduct their politics. And we say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago today, one, we acknowledge the authority of the judiciary in taking decisions in the affairs of all of us, private or public. We also acknowledge the openness and the total breadth of the doors of the court for any citizen or agency to go to the court and seek relief if they believe that they have been wronged. But having said that, we also acknowledge persons who see themselves in the political arena and who look around for opportunities to advance their political possibilities. And today, we acknowledge that there are persons in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly a handful of people who had the responsibility for running the state's affairs. They were the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Today they are largely the opposition of Trinidad and Tobago. And in strategizing their circumstance and their future prospects, they have identified the courts as a place to go to create as much mayhem and disturbance as possible in Trinidad and Tobago, with a view that if they are successful or even partially successful in creating this climate of disturbance, that it will advance their political prospect. And I say that without apologies to any, and I intend as head of the executive to defend the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago from such political excursions. We, as the executive, got into office on the basis that we took part in a campaign, and that campaign took place in 2015. We told the country during that campaign that the property tax is a reasonable tax and a fair tax, and we would carry out the law and collect that tax. That was even before we experienced the precipitous collapse to $27 of oil prices under our tenure. because between September and February of the following year, oil prices kept falling from 45 to 30 to 30, right, all the way down to $27. So now more than ever, we are required to collect that tax for the service of the country. But we say we have a mandate so to do because it was an issue in the election, a carryover from when you were in the opposition. The government of the day, using its executive authority, decided not to carry out the law, and it gave waivers to the tax. It didn't abolish the law, it gave waivers, and at the end of its term, it ended the waivers, which meant that the law was in force and the tax was collectible from 2016 going forward. And we said that we will do that. In fact, we didn't have to do anything except to follow the law. It is our understanding of our own experience and proper legal advice, which we have been taking at the highest level, that tax collection under existing laws is a matter for the executive. If there are any breaches of the law, then every citizen could complain to the judiciary. But what we've been having are people who, outside of the executive of which they were a part, now that they are in the opposition, they want to carry out a policy which they carried out in government, which is to prevent the tax from being collected, to prevent the law from being applied. And I'm saying today that the PNM will have none of it. The opposition will not run this country. The rules that we operate under is the rule of the majority, and that majority creates the executive, and it's the authority of the executive to observe the law. And if there are challenges to actions of this executive, we are prepared to defend those matters all the way to the Privy Council on every occasion. Unfortunately, in so doing, it will incur costs for the taxpayer, because it is the taxpayer that will have to pay the government's expenses going forward on every occasion. But suffice it to say, on every challenge to the government, where the government, in its own thinking and proper advice, sees that it's acting properly, the challenges would be pursued to the Privy Council if we have to. Since there are people who believe that what they carry out in the executive is what should happen, and know that they are not the executive, they will have the similar result by simply playing to the courts. I don't want to go into the details of what happened in the courts, except to say that the government respects the rulings of the court at every step, and if we have to go to the next step, we will. But insofar as the political side of it, where there are those who believe that they could make decisions, go to the court, raise arguments such as, we have been in the government for 5 years. We had no problem with the law. We gave waivers, and since we gave waivers, the new government must do the same thing, or the government must not carry out the law. We part company with that. If they are able to get the court to prevent the government from carrying out the law, then more power to them. But the government will resist what we see as a political response to the government carrying out its oath of office. It is our understanding that taxation and the collection of taxes is a matter for the executive. And thankfully, at the appeal stage in these proceedings, the appeal court has ruled in such a way that the executive continues to be of that view, and we will proceed to collect the taxes that are available. And let me just say to the public, particularly those persons who are least able to look after themselves and who are most dependent on the state's input in their daily lives, that what I'm talking about here is $500 million per year that members of the last cabinet are fighting tooth and nail to prevent the government from accessing. There are persons, as a matter of fact, this non-collection of this tax started in 2009. So it is now 7 years that these taxes have not been collected. And if we multiply 500 million by 7 years, That's $3.5 million, $3.5 billion that have been left uncollected. And let me go further, in case you all don't understand what we're dealing with in Trinidad and Tobago. Last month, the Minister of Finance had difficulty paying salaries in Trinidad and Tobago. It took a lot of intervention, including borrowing money, to service this country. And against that background, people who were in the last cabinet and had 5 years to do all the things they want this government to do in 5 months, see the court as a place to go to stymie the government's opportunity to collect $500 million on an annual basis. That is their assignment, that is their agenda. The government intends to resist it. We believe that at the end of the day, the average citizen of this country, the average citizens of this country, who we believe are honest, right-thinking people, will support the government's initiative to collect what is in effect a reasonable tax, which will contribute to the service of Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition, which was the government a few months ago, had gone out of its way to misrepresent the facts of this tax, telling people the government will take away the property, it will cost how much, $100,000 a year and all that. All of it lies for a purpose of their own understanding. The government has gone out, I myself have gone out on a platform with worked examples showing the population what kinds of charges would attend this tax. And will continue so to do, and the Minister of Finance will proceed. The fact that there are a handful of people in the opposition, largely people of the last cabinet, and I want to make that point very clear, they have good reasons for not wanting this aspect of the state's operations to come to pass. Good reason. And they put themselves out as defenders of the public interest, and I dare say, ladies and gentlemen of Trinidad and Tobago, they are not defenders of the public interest, they are defenders of their own interests. I have been advised by the Attorney General that this morning's appeal in the court has gone in favor of the government defending its position, and those who have gone there, the court has thrown out their effort, including a position from the court that, what are the words of the court? Those who have gone to the doors of the court in seeking to have this matter, that where they got their permission to go forward, the judge at first instance was plainly wrong. That is the finding of the appeal court. That was the position of the government from day one. And we have come to that pass after paying or owing, we haven't paid as yet, I presume, obtaining significant, costly legal advice that this matter which came to the court, those who brought it there were plainly wrong. The other matter which, again, been exercising us, country as a whole, is the whole question of the role and composition of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission. Members of the last cabinet, including a former Attorney General, and I dare say one that ceased to be an Attorney General because he's under serious allegation of the worst kind, allegations of interfering in the dispensing of justice in Trinidad and Tobago. He had to leave the cabinet, he and his friends, in that way. They formed a group, and in furtherance of this general obstructionism, gone to the court. And the main point is that the Judicial and Legal Service Commission is improperly constituted because it contains 2 former High Court judges. I want to tell the population that those 2 former High Court judges were there in those positions under the administration of the last government. Apparently, they were not an annoyance to the government then. They are only now an annoyance, and the Constitution is only now being violated because they are the same 2 people. all of a sudden, their presence requires mayhem in the country, a request to the court to rule that the commission is improperly put in place, and therefore all actions of the commission would be null and void. And I want you as citizens to try and figure out what would have been the condition today if the court had ruled in support of that excursion. It would have meant that what they are saying to the country is that the actions taken by these people ought not to be entertained, and the consequences of that would have been quite grave. But it would have served their purpose, because what they want is to create mayhem in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, their position is, since they can't win matters in the court to overturn the elections, that they will make the country ungovernable. And this is their approach. I simply want to say to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that while we are not shouting loudly and joining the rah-rah up front, we will engage the battle at every turn. We mightn't engage every skirmish, but we'll engage the battle at every turn. This government has a mandate to provide Trinidad and Tobago with good governance, and if there are those who believe that good governance can only be had in mayhem, then that only forms another part of the government's assignment. Today the court has ruled, or was it last night, whenever it was, I've lost track of time on these matters. Yesterday, the court ruled that those who approach the court on that matter, they are in fact once again wrong. These are two major matters which, had they gone in favor of those who have gone to the court, under the understanding that the court is there to advance their political agenda, had those matters gone in their favor, this country would have been in chaos, and it is their intention to create that chaos. And again, I want to make it very clear. The government is not saying that you're not free to go to court. Anybody could go to court and tell the court whatever you want, and the government will respect your right so to do. But if it is a challenge to the government's authority to govern the country or to protect the public interest, the government will act all the way to the Privy Council on every occasion. And that is the reason why today the cabinet met on Wednesday, because had the decision been different, our response would have been quite different. This for us is a political battle. If there are questions, I will take the questions now. Yes, Joel.
So in the context of the property tax and ruling of the appeal court, what do you tell citizens with regard to the evaluation in terms of forms and so on?
Well, the court has made some statements that will be clarified and fed to the public. I don't want to play any lawyer here. I am dealing purely with the executive's position and the political issue. The Minister of Finance and the Minister of the Attorney General would tell the public exactly what the judge's ruling is and how we proceed from here. But at first blush, it is clear that we can proceed to collect the tax. We are not injuncted. The injunctions have been vitiated, and the arguments have been dismissed.
So in other words, the opposition's claim that public servants collecting the forms may be in contempt of court and so on, the government's view is that that is no longer an issue.
As I said, I will allow the Attorney General to respond to those matters. I don't want to, in law, the presence or absence of the word wherefore, therefore, hitherto could make a big difference. I'm a geologist, and I'll stay there. I would like the Attorney General and his colleagues indicate what I myself haven't read the judgment. I'm relying purely on the first understanding of what the court has done today and yesterday. So any further depth of what the judgment means and so on, to me, it simply means that the government can proceed. We are not injuncted.
If I may, Prime Minister, what we've been told by the state's lawyers is the appeals were allowed, but they've ordered that public notices be issued telling the public that it is voluntary, and the exercise cannot be resumed until after the first publication of these notices. All right, so the Minister of Finance will issue the necessary notices or the Commissioner of Valuations, and thereafter they will be able to proceed. Correct.
But understand something here. All of this came about as a result of the Ministry of Finance observing the requirements of the law under the Valuation Act. And it came as a surprise to the country, but it is because we understood very clearly the objective and agenda of the opposition why we ensured that this was done. For had we not done that, the argument in the court would have been that they have gone ahead to collect the property tax without complying with the requirement of the Valuation Act to have those forms go out. Understood? Had the forms not gone out in keeping with the requirement of the Valuation Act, what they would have gone to the court with would have been an argument that we are not observing the law. So we protected ourselves from that by observing the law. They objected to us observing the law. In fact, it was put across in many of their misrepresentations that it was the Minister of Finance who was being fast and loose and obstreperous. That was not correct. It was the Minister of Finance following the requirement of the written law. Now the court has ruled and has given clear directions as to how we are to proceed.
What do you say to people who have suspicions or who are making allegations that the courts may be complicit in the political agendas, and do you feel that there are enough checks and balances within our court system, including perhaps, and including importantly the Privy Council, which is distant from the local situation, to protect the institution of the judiciary from this kind of, any kind of maneuvering by the political forces?
I simply would say that systems are as good as the people who operate them. And there's no perfect system. And there are very few perfect people. I would not want to tell the population to do anything other than to have confidence in your country, have confidence in yourself, and hold people accountable.
What about confidence in the institutions?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The institutions might have flaws. There might be failings. But you need to have confidence in their inherent goodness and respond, if you have to failings and demand accountability at every step. That's the only way. If you don't do that, then you can become quite cynical and have no confidence in anything or anybody, and then you live a miserable life every day. I simply want to draw the attention, since you've raised it to me personally, I maintain confidence in our judiciary. At the personal level and the level of the government, as head of the government, I will say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago to have confidence in the judiciary. But I want to point out to you a particular matter in which I was personally involved at the personal level and at the level of the leader of the opposition, part of the country's arrangements under the Constitution. I took issue in this country with a matter out of the Attorney General's office as leader of the opposition, you may recall. As a result of having done that, querying the actions of the then Attorney General in treating with the handling of that extradition matter, the issuance of extradition, because it was the opposition's position that once the matter was lost at the Privy Council, the state was in a position to carry out the extradition. As opposition leader, I took issue with the way it was handled, resulting in the non-carrying out of that extradition. The Attorney General of the day sued me in my personal capacity for saying that publicly. So here it was, I was opposition leader, I was seeking the public's interests, and I was speaking on behalf of the public with respect to the actions of governance of the day. I was sued by the Attorney General, and that matter was going through the court. The judge who was assigned the matter recused himself on the grounds that he was a former law chamber partner of my wife, so he recused himself. A new judge had to be appointed. And the matter that I had to respond to was the role and protection of the rights of the opposition leader to challenge and question actions of the government, in this instance, the Attorney General. And therefore, we wanted to ensure that we properly argued this matter with significant case law, because had that matter not been properly argued, and if it was lost, then it would have resulted in an evisceration of the office of opposition leader. It would have prevented the opposition leader from being a proper watchdog on the government. If the outcome is that you can end up losing a matter in the court and bankrupting yourself for advancing the public interest. So at the court, we asked for an extension in time to be able to put a proper defense and a detailed response to the suit brought by the Attorney General of the day, one Anand Logan. Because of the recusal of that judge and this request for an extension, we were now waiting on the court to tell us, one, that a new judge has been assigned to the case, two, that the extension was granted, three, what date we are required to respond to the matter under those consequences. The next thing we knew, the then Attorney General Anand Ramlogan was on the news holding up a judgment that he had got against the opposition leader because he had won the case, because the opposition leader had not put in a defense, and therefore he won in the absence of a defense, and he's now going to the master in the court, and he's expecting substantial damages. That's what I face as opposition leader. Turns out the next morning that, one, we were never, my legal team and myself, we were never told that a new judge had been put on the case. We were never told that the judge had agreed to give us an extension, and we were never told about the dates that we are supposed to respond to the court. And in that situation, we couldn't respond, and judgment was taken up by the Attorney General against me in my personal capacity. And then we found out that while we who asked for the extension, we who had to put up a defense to a suit of this magnitude brought by the Attorney General, were not informed of these pieces of information, that the Attorney General, Anand Ramlogan, he was informed by email and informed personally of these facts, and he waited there in the slips until the time expired and took up judgment against me. It's against that background that I tell you today, I have confidence in the judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago. I have confidence against that, even that background. Because we just have to build this country. We just have to build it. We're no longer a colony. We are an independent nation, and our institutions have to rise to the occasion. And I want to end this commentary to you by drawing to your attention a comment made by former President A.N.R. Robinson that has never left me. And it was a comment he made. I can't remember the exact time and location, but I remember how it struck me when he said it. And it is this, that one of the drawbacks of this country is that the professional class has been consistently failing Trinidad and Tobago. And that comment is still valid today. And that is a hurdle that we have to overcome.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of misinformation has been put out concerning the property tax and so. But what happens to the citizen now who decides to voluntarily submit the form? What will happen in that process?
The court said they can.
The court said it can do it as long as the ministry publish notice of that nature. And you see, let us understand what's been happening. Assessments have to be made of your property. The forms are meant to assist this process. So it's either you sit home, do nothing, and the valuation department will do the assessment. They will tell you what the assessment is and you pay your tax. Or you can take the opportunity to say to them, this is what I think my valuation should be. I am the owner here. This is what I think it would rent for. This is what I think the tax should be. So in other words, you are involved in the process. Of course, I know you'll put the best valuation on it to suit yourself. But it will assist the department if you provide any and all or some information. That's all. So if you choose not to participate, what you're saying, okay, go ahead and do it and let me know what you've done. On the other hand, you say, I can participate, I will tell you what the forms ask for, and you use it to come up with a valuation. And even after that, you can still query it. There's provision for query. And of course, if you never pay the tax, if you choose not to, the law also makes provision for that. What the provision is not, it is not a provision where somebody can come and just seize your property. A certain period of time has to pass. You have to be given certain notice through due process, and you have to, it has to go, I think it's 5 years. You have to go to the court, and then the court, you and the court, will deal with that matter, and the court will now make a court order as to whether you have none to pay or you have it to pay, failing which you can lose your property. That is in the law and has been there ever since I got my first property at age 18, 17 as a matter of fact. So it's nothing new. But of course, there are people in the country who are on a campaign of misinformation to create mayhem. Because as I told you before, the intention is not to have citizens do their best for their country. It is to create mayhem and to make the place ungovernable. They wouldn't admit to that. They wouldn't admit to that. I mean, look at the former Prime Minister, who is now the opposition leader, talking about Army Gate. I could talk about a number of gates. I could talk about Bryan Gate. Next to Bryan Gate is Marijuana Gate. What was it? No, in South. The plant-like substance gate, right? There's Prison Gate. And I'll tell you something, eh? I'm always ready and willing to learn. But there are some people in this country, rather than be leading us anywhere, they have questions to answer. And what is in the public interest is that they answer those questions rather than tell you what the questions should be. But it's up to the population. We will ensure that the information gets to the population so that the population will make its own decision as to who it wants to believe, who it wants to follow, and who it wants to adulate.
That there's a good reason that some of them are pretending to be defenders of the public's interest, but they're really defending their own. Is there any way you can get to most?
I have no problem with that. There are many people who found themselves in this country with property they can't explain, and they believe that if there is no governance system dealing with property, then they can enjoy that forever. If, on the other hand, the system of collecting taxes involve ownership identification and explanation of the ownership, then, and valuations and so on, they have a problem with that. That is not news. You know? And that is part of the major driving force in this package of misinformation seeking to use the population in its disquiet against what is in effect a simple, straightforward situation. The property tax, paying tax on your property is predicated on an understanding. It's not perfect, but the understanding, the underpinning of the tax is that he or she who has more pays more in tax. So if you have a small little caboose somewhere, the tax might be $1. If you have a mall, the tax might be $1 million. Unto him who has much, much is expected. He who has little, little is expected. And in fact, there's provision for none at all. If you are unable to pay the tax under conditions which can be demonstrated, the Ministry of Finance could waive the tax for you. All of that is there. So what all this rah going on? And in the meantime, every year, persons who are able and willing to pay the tax is not paying it. And the country is foregoing money. You know how much money remains out there from persons who have been serviced by the Treasury, who have not made their contribution because this is going on? $500 million a year. And if you listen to them, what they're saying, they'll make it permanent. that the country will forego this tax every year for the next God knows how long. Well, maybe that might suit them. It doesn't suit the rest of the country. The people who are waiting for $500 million in medication, to service the elderly, to pay the teachers, because money is fungible. If you don't have that 500 million, it has to come from somewhere else. But if you have it, you can do something else with it. That's what it is. And what we are taking objection to is persons coming out of the cabinet and coming now in the opposition, using their free time to use the court to try to stymie this cabinet. It ain't gonna happen.
The manner in which the property tax was rolled out on your administration did not open...
No, I am not. I took issue with the Ministry of Finance for not laying the foundation, because I knew that these mischief makers would have made mischief of it, and I knew the population ought to have been properly prepared to receive it, since it was not something we've been accustomed to. Right? Because many persons, while they're willing to participate, there were many questions to be answered, and I must say that the Ministry of Finance did not do the best job of it. But that does not say that the Ministry of Finance is not to carry out the law. And of course, this is not a criticism of to say, well, all right, somebody's going to get fired tomorrow. You may do your best, but your best isn't enough. And all we have to do is to keep on improving on it. And we are improving on it. Because right now, the subject of property tax, a lot has been said, and we'll continue to say it, so that people can be comfortable that, one, the tax is fair and reasonable. Two, it is part of the administration of collecting revenue to service the country. And three, as we said in our local government campaign, we ran a local government campaign last year, saying that one of the things, one of the pillars of local government reform is to allow local government bodies, as we prepare them, we're now doing the legislation, as we prepare them, bring them to a point where they will collect this tax and use it as Tobago is doing under the THA. And I'm getting advice from people in the opposition saying, oh, they will only approve it if the government gives the money to local government. Well, we are providing money to local government now. If they collect and keep that tax, you net it off. But what the tax collection would do, it gives them a revenue stream under their control. Right? So these are all contrived arguments to create mischief and create mayhem, because they are on a pathway to make the country ungovernable. We are on a pathway to make this country progress under good governance.
Is it likely that the collection of the tax may be delayed because of, well, one, the time that has elapsed with the court ruling, and the fact that it's now voluntary, and that more properties will have to be manually assessed by the Commission?
We just have to follow the law. The law is there to guide all of us. There is no law that says that you have to collect all the tax on one day from everybody. It just says that for every year, this tax is payable. So if you collect yours in January, the other one in September, whatever the case might be, you collect the tax. And if it's not paid in this year, it's carried over into the next year. We know that. I've been paying this tax since I was 17 years old. And I always knew that if I didn't pay it, there are consequences. So this is an unnecessary aggravation, but it's politically expedient for some people. But the government is going to resist it, and we are confident that in the end, it will be in the public's interest for the law to be followed.
Of the GLSC reminded me of slightly a comment you made in the Parliament that your administration, the government, has a great wall of China between itself and the judiciary. I'm wondering, given some of the recent concerns and issues, associations, vote, and so on, have you or any member of your cabinet had any discussions with the Chief Justice on any issues of concern regarding the judicial process?
I know of no such discussion in recent times. I know in an earlier time, the Attorney General and his team have been talking to the Judiciary in the things that we need to do to dispense justice in a more timely manner and a more effective manner. Those discussions will continue. But if you're talking about the development, about the tenure of the Chief Justice, I know of no such contact being made. And I'm glad that you observed my comment in the Parliament. Because you see, I need to say something on that, since I have your attention. And let me tell the country something right now. I just told it to the Cabinet, because the Cabinet is full of young people, many of whom were not here. I went into Patrick Manning's office one day, And I just happened to have got there when he received a piece of correspondence from, I think it was the DPP's office. The AG brought it from the DPP, something like that. And he was standing, and I walked into the office, and he said to me, "Look what they've thrown into my lap." And I said, "What?" And he said, "This document came from the DPP's end, or the AG's end, and the DPP. And it's a complaint about the interference in the criminal justice system by the then Chief Justice." And I said, "What are you going to do about it?" He said, "Well, I am now required to have this tribunal to look into it, but before I do that, I have to talk to Mr. Sharma to give him an opportunity to be heard." And I left there knowing that something serious had developed. Allegations were being made against the Chief Justice. The Prime Minister had been informed, and that the Prime Minister will respond. And I knew that the Chief Justice had some serious questions to answer, given where the allegations were coming from. And I watched that matter going through all the hoops until it became presented to this country that the substance of the matter of Mr. Sharma's difficulty was Patrick Manning hounding him out of office. And I look at that in amazement, because I knew how it started and I knew what the issue was. But for those who wanted a different narrative, they record now, and even you members of the media, you're repeating it as though it's Bible, gospel, that Patrick Manning, just so, in a capricious and hubristic way, was driving the Chief Justice out of office. Just like that, he got up and he went mad one day. I can tell you now that there's absolutely no truth in that. The office of the Prime Minister, which Patrick Manning held, was brought into that matter by serious allegations being made against the then Chief Justice by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. So those who are inviting me as Prime Minister now to join them in an attack on the current Chief Justice, I'm making it very clear from now that I have had the experience of Patrick Manning. And I knew it wouldn't take very long for them to move from the invitation to accusation against me in this office. But I have more important things to do, and that is ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago's interest is being protected and that the quality of life of the people of Trinidad and Tobago is improved in whatever little way the government can improve it and protect it at this point in time. If there are those who want to spend their time baying at the heels of the Chief Justice, they could do so if they wish. My understanding is that there are specific conditions under which the Chief Justice can be removed from office, and I'm not wasting time. Thank you very much.